And we're live. Welcome back to another Corona Geek. Here we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today we're going to talk about workflow, how to create app artwork, and how to do it in a variety of different tools. Joining us is Greg Pugh from GP Animations, and he's going to share all of his creative goodness with us. So thanks, Greg, for being here.
No problem.
Awesome. Thanks everybody else for being here as well. We've got looks like we've got a baby in studio. That's awesome. Get them start early. So that's very cool. And also joining us is Colette. Thanks, Colette, for being here. And Brian Burton. Hey, how's it going down there, Doctor?
Hey.
Doctor. Is there a doctor in the house?
Not that kind of doctor.
Not that kind of doctor. That's good to know. I'd be like, my elbow hurts when I do this, Doc. You'd be like, don't do that anymore.
I was on a flight.
Okay, so
they were saying, any doctors on board? I'm not that kind of doctor. No.
I'm not that kind of doctor.
I don't think I can help you with blood and guts and stuff. No.
I'm pretty sure you're going to die. All right. Well, before we get into today's topic, one, I'd like to say again, thank you all for being here, who are watching live and who are here on the panel, because Apple is doing their keynote right now, and quite frankly, I almost didn't show up. There's always so many cool things coming out of that you just can't turn it off. And I like to actually watch Twit. Do you guys watch just the blank keynote all by itself, or do you watch like the narrated version?
I prefer
Apple TV.
Apple TV. You do the Apple TV. Brian, what do you do?
Twit.
He's like Twit. I like Twit. I like the commentary, because
Yes.
there are sometimes when they'll say, "Oh, well, Android's been doing that for 3 years," or "Oh, that's a new version of the thing that they did before that they killed, but now they're bringing back." Like, oh, really? I didn't know that.
And let's face it, Leo's great. I mean, he was Tech TV before they sold out. So.
Yeah. He has turned Apple keynotes into a spectator sport. I mean, It is really like you have to have the commentary, I feel like. So thank you guys for being here. All right, so if you weren't here last week, we actually talked about on Corona Geek number 91. We talked about Corona Explorer, Corona Composer, the beta version of Corona Composer. It's actually the GUI, not the API. And we walked through some of the features of it, how it works, and things like that. We also looked at iOS calendar events, how to do that through a server solution so that you could get events onto your iOS calendar on your device. And we also looked at social sharing and creating panels for that. So if you haven't checked that episode out, go back and watch that. You can find that over at youtube.com/coronageek. That's the best place really to check out all the videos that are there. And while you're there, subscribe, and that way you'll get updated on all the latest videos that come out. Also, last week, Liquid Fun is live, so we talked a little bit about that in one of the previous shows. If you're not familiar with what that is, basically Box2D, which is the built-in physics engine for Corona, is a rigid body physics engine. So you think about squares, rectangles, triangles, that kind of thing. The Liquid Fun is a fluid body or a soft body simulation engine. So basically, you can do things like fluids, like water, and like blobs of things and stuff like that. And so Google has created this thing called Liquid Fun. They combine it with Box2D, so you kind of have both of the physics engines kind of smashed together, and that's now all integrated into Corona. So if you want to do liquid type simulations, you can do that now in Corona, and there's actually, in the latest build, in the download, you can get some samples there that you can play with and see how to implement that in your apps. So I thought that was very cool. And did you guys see the watch that was running Corona?
Yes.
That's very cool. Rob Allison actually put that up on Vine, a little short video of that on Vine, and that was I guess an OMAT smartwatch. Have you guys seen these? I haven't been keeping up on the smartwatch scene. No. I'm waiting for Apple to come out with something that's basically my fanboy disclaimer, but apparently Rob had a friend, a coworker, who put that game, that Corona built game, onto the smartwatch, and they were playing it. So it's a pretty good thing. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can go check it out. It's on Vine on Rob Allison's profile, and also there was a write-up on Fandroid, and I think there was a conversation that was going on over at Reddit where they were kind of just discussing the details. But I think the best write-up was over at Fandroid. They talked about the watch and the app and things like that. So go check that out. And if you have a chance, go check out Rob's app 14px. You can just Google 14px. You can find his website. We'll link to it in the show notes. It's also in the Apple App Store. That's a fun game, and they're also working on a new game called Alone, which you can find at alone-game.com. Basically, I asked Rob, I said, hey, how are you, what are you working on? What's going on? And he said he had teamed up with Laserdog Games, and they were doing this app, Alone, and it's pretty sweet looking. I'll link to the trailer, but it's pretty cool looking. It looks like it's you're flying through caves, and there's a whole lot of parallax stuff going on. I don't know if you guys ever saw what's that game where you're like a kid and you're running and everything's in black and white and
Limbo.
You know what I'm talking? Limbo. Yeah, it's very Limbo-ish because it's all kind of monochromatic. Yeah. Thank you for the art terms there, Greg. You're gonna have to help me with that kind of. And it's very cool. So I go check that out. And I don't know if you guys were watching the Apple keynote thing, but there were a few takeaways I thought were interesting. I mean, there was a ton of takeaways, but we don't have time to talk about them all. But I heard that they said that there's 1.2 million apps in the App Store.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, that is crazy. And there's 800. They've sold 800 million devices. 800 million devices. Wow. So the other impressive part was they said they have 300 million customers a week come through the App Store. So I thought that was pretty telling. Having 300 million. That's like imagine being at a mall and having 300 million people walk by your door. That's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is very amazing.
That they are improving their how's called searchability when users can actually search the App Store better.
Well, there were a bunch of App Store changes that are supposed to be coming in the fall. One of them, they were going to make maybe some search changes. There was definitely something about adding an editor's choice logo to listings. They were going to bundle so that you could buy multiple. Yeah, they're going to buy multiple apps at a discount with one tap. So I guess if you want to be able to sell, like you can buy my apps separately for $1 each, or if you want to buy all three of them, I'll sell them to you for $1.50. I don't know. They didn't say what the details of that were, but it's something that people have been wanting. And yeah, also developer videos. So it's not a try before you buy, but it is sort of a preview of what the app is about.
Free applications, free games.
Yeah, and they said they do test flight, which we all know that they bought test flight, but that'll be another way to kind of be able to test your apps out and get feedback and things like that. I want to know how they're going to implement that. I mean, are you going to be able to do that before you launch, or is that going to be after you launch? They weren't real clear on that. But there's some impressive numbers I thought there, very impressive numbers. So I have to go back and watch the keynote, the whole thing. I didn't get to watch it all. So maybe we can talk about that next week.
Yeah, check out that Swift language. I actually retweeted an ebook to teach you how to program Swift. It's like 500 pages though, so.
Oh, right. You said that they had announced a new programming language?
Yeah. So I guess you'll still put it in. You'd still open up Xcode to write it, and it's a lot simpler than Objective-C. But obviously, it's only iOS only. So if you want to make cross-platform, stick with Corona.
Can you post a link to that book, please?
Yeah. Hold on, I got it here. Put it in the chat. Yeah, that's very interesting. When you guys said that, hey, Apple just announced this, scaled down programming language or whatever, I was like, you got to figure out what that means in terms of development, but it's definitely not going to be cross-platform.
No.
Guaranteed.
Not how much they were harping on Android throughout the keynote there.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, they can adopt it in some way, like for other platforms. So maybe you have to write less on other platforms.
You come out and like making an open standard sort of thing, or.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's with C#. Microsoft did that with C#. They created a whole brand new language, and then they kind of released it out into the world, and people have adopted it. There's a lot of tools that have adopted C#, but it's taken a while though. So anyway,
I was impressed by two things that Swift language, they say it's several times faster than Objective-C, which is kind of ridiculous how it could be faster. I don't quite sure. And another thing is their metal replacement for OpenGL, which is ridiculously fast. And this is awesome.
Yeah,
so if it runs on iOS, it must be runnable on Android as well. So I don't know, maybe Android can somehow implement this too. So it's I don't know what it is, but according to that, big players like CryEngine and other were able to port the engine to using Metal. Say that it's not hard to port your existing OpenGL applications.
Well, there you go. Yeah, maybe not necessarily Google specifically, but maybe the community you're saying might be interested in something like that. Yeah. Those types of things could happen. I mean, at the end of the day, developers want to do what they want to do, right? And so they really don't care about the turf wars of different companies. They just want to be able to do the things they want to be able to do. So, all right. Well, talking about doing the things we want to be able to do, let's talk about workflow, creating artwork for apps. So, Greg, what do you have planned for us today? What are we going to talk about?
Well, my personal software choice is Adobe Flash, but I know some people aren't fans of Adobe, nor do they want to show out like the monthly fee, because I think they're actually upping their monthly fee from $20 a month to $40 a month, which is kind of steep. So I figured first I'd show some much cheaper options that you can use. And
well, I will say that's I think it's dependent on when you got in and what status you have. Like if you're a student, you get a cheaper rate.
Yeah.
If you took advantage of some early on special, you have a different rate.
Well, at least for the first year.
Yeah, and then I think after the first year they kind of bump the price of it.
How much of the whole Creative Cloud you're using.
Right.
Yeah, so, they just emailed me saying that they extended my $20 a month until 2015, but after that it's going to go for $40 a month. So, but
cool.
Like you were saying earlier, that's the cost of the cloud. You get everybody into your little ecosystem, and once they can't get out, you can charge whatever you want. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. We'll give you another year, $20 to be able to get more ingrained in our system, and then we'll raise the price.
Yeah, we'll double it. But yeah, the first thing I'm going to show you is Mischief, which their website's madewithmischief.com, and it's only $65. And here you see the sexy doctor there, which I drew.
Nice.
The great thing about Mischief is it's infinite scaling, so you can zoom in and out as far as you want, and you'll never lose the line quality. And if you're going to use this for mobile application development, what you can do is take like a selection. So say we just want this part, and then you can go up here and export or save your selection as, export it. I'll do a PNG. So here you can choose what size you need it for your app. So if you're doing like a 1024 app, if you need a higher resolution, if you're doing it for print, you can get rid of the background, just like you can in Photoshop or Flash, the more expensive applications. And, you know, like I said, it's only $65, and you never lose the line quality. It's very much like Flash. It's anti-alias. It's not bitmapped.
Okay, so for the people who are listening at home and may not necessarily be watching the video, we're looking at Mischief, which we'll put a link to in the show notes, but it is a vector-based drawing application. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it gives us the infinite canvas, which really means that there's no defined canvas size, which I found a little disturbing, liberating and disturbing in the beginning, because it was liberating because I was like, oh, I can draw anything I want, and I can make it as big as I want, and I can get all detailed and whatever. And then when I went to export, I was like, how do I export it to the size that I want? But you're saying when you go to File Export, you can pick the size that you want, but you just have to have the viewable area on the screen.
Yeah, you know, you can zoom out to what you want, and with the selection tool, you just kind of dictate the size. You get about the basic of what you want.
Well, how does that work when you're like, I want it to be 1024 by 1024?
I think you'd have to do a square
Selection.
Square selection. But you know, then you could just say what your height is. So if you had the square and you knew you wanted a square shape, just select the square shape.
Have you ever added? Because I know it has layers. Have you ever added a canvas layer? Like created 1024 by 1024 in a different app, and then bring it in as a canvas layer, and then draw within that square?
No, I've personally never done that, but that's a good idea too. You could always just like build yourself a template.
That's because you're good at this stuff. The rest of us need training wheels. After you and I talked, because we were talking on Facebook, and you had showed me some of these new features of Mischief in the recent update. And I was like, well, how do I do a canvas? Oh, well, I could just create a template in, like you said, in Photoshop. So make it just a 1024 by 1024 white square, bring it in, put it as the bottom layer, draw within that area, and then when I go to do my selection, I can know that I'm going to select the white square and everything within it, and then export from there. So I might be a pixel off or two in my selection, but it works out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, and you know, one-time fee, $65, and they're always updating it. So it's just a very small company. So I think it's definitely worth checking out.
On the export, was that you said it exported to PNG and stuff like that? Is it also what other formats does it support? I thought it supported Photoshop, PSD.
Let's see if we do actual visual canvas. I've only done PNG. Oh yeah, here you go. JPEG and Photoshop.
Yeah.
So if you do have Photoshop, there you go.
Yeah, or if you have GIMP, or what's the other one that's out there? You might talk about these in a minute, but there's another one that's on the Mac that's like it's very
Sketchbook
much.
Pro?
Oh, well, no, not Sketchbook Pro. Sorry, I'm derailing your conversation. There's another one, and I'll look it up, but it's Pixlr or Pixar or something like that. It's on the Mac. It's like $65 as well or something, but it's very very Photoshop-like.
Pixelmator.
What's him? Pixelmator?
Pixelmator.
Yeah, I'll link to that one as well. It's a nice app. It doesn't have some of the things that Photoshop has.
Good one.
Say that again?
It has been updated recently, so they got a good update.
Yeah, I haven't used it in forever and a day, because if you wanted to do things like draw primitives like a square, you had to like do a selection and then fill the selection. And I was like, well, in Photoshop I can just grab the thing and do, you know. So, but it's still a nice app, especially for the price. Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
So yeah, that's just one option. It's probably one of the least expensive apps I'll show today. So you can just not save that. On the far end of the spectrum, much more expensive would be Animate Pro by Toon Boom. It's actually like the animator's answer to like Flash, because Flash is made for animation, and then like true animators usually use Toon Boom Animate. It's similar and different. I haven't really played around with it too much, but like when you're drawing, it will show like it's bitmapped when you actually export it. It's anti-alias just like Flash is. One thing I couldn't get used to was when you select things, it actually selects all your lines and your fills as objects, little like Illustrator.
So does that mean that these are kind of like vectors that you can size dynamically and not lose a lot of quality, or what does that mean?
Yeah, you can. It's just the weird thing is it just looks bitmapped as you're working in it, but then you just have to publish it out, and then everything's very smooth.
And I think I read somewhere where they did that for performance or something, right? So that's just
Yeah.
it's just a preview window type thing.
And depending on which version you have, this goes from anywhere from 380 to 700.
So let's back up for just a second and kind of preface why would we use vector images over like a bitmap image or something like that? Why do people work in those tools?
It just depends on the style you're looking for. If you want really clean, cartoony lines, you usually go with a vector. If you want something more painted, more realistic looking, you can go with a bitmap, because then you could use like textured paintbrushes to get it like almost like you painted on a canvas, that style. Whereas this, you can see it's very cartoony, very like simplistic.
So if we wanted to do something in a bitmap, we could, but we would have to what? We have to start like in a really big format and go small, or what's the best practice there?
Yes, with bitmaps like Photoshop, my best practice would be to try to think as big as you're going to need it, because then it's easier to scale down, because you'll never lose quality. But if you try to take something small and scale it up, you're going to lose all your image quality. It's going to look really blurry and muddy. So whenever I'm using something like Photoshop, I usually try to think, well, the biggest screen I'll support is probably the Retina iPad at 2048 by 1536. And then anything after that you can kind of scale and crop as needed. Whereas if you just made it for like the iPhone and then you said you want it for the iPad later, you're going to try to blow all those images up and it's going to look terrible.
That's good to know, because I think a lot of people talk about, well, I only use vector, and because they're afraid that if they have to resize it or something, that they'll have to recreate it all over again. But I guess it just depends on your planning ability. Like if you know you can create it at a large enough format and then size it down, it doesn't really matter if you're using vector or bitmap.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it just depends on how much you plan.
Scaling down. Sorry to interrupt. When you're developing your game for really high resolutions and scaling it down, don't forget to sharpen it, to increase the sharpness of the downsized images, because without sharpness they get a little bit blurry. Not much, but a little bit. So when you add this extra sharpness, it looks really much better on lower res resolutions.
Cool. So shrink it and then sharpen it, or
Yes.
sharpen it and then shrink it.
Shrink and then sharp.
Shrink then sharp. These things are important. Okay. So Toon Boom, but Toon Boom's like how do I even remember the price tag? I know it's over $1,000, right? I mean, it's
well,
that's Harmony.
This is Animate.
Oh.
Animate's 380. Animate Pro is 700. And these prices I'm giving are like right this second. I know when I was checking, a lot of these companies were having sales, so these prices might be fluctuating.
So
And
Animate's
they've got a lower end product. I'm blanking. Studio, Toon Boom Studio, that can also be used for it. It's just not at the same level as Animate or Animate Pro.
Yeah, Studio is like, I can't remember, it's somewhere in the $50 to $100 range or something, right?
Yeah, it's very reasonable.
Okay. But Harmony, you say, is the one that's like $1,000 or more.
Yeah, that's the professional level tool for if you're going to be a professional animator.
Okay. Hey, who's that guy?
This program is actually pretty cool. It's kind of like Photoshop, kind of like Flash. It's originally made for like comic books. That's why it's called Manga Studio. It goes anywhere from $48 to $210, depending on what kind of version you want. But the $48 version just does plenty. Here you can see when you zoom in, it's very much like Flash. You don't really lose too much line quality. and it can publish out things for print at the higher resolution of like 300 dpi or higher, or you can use it for web at 72 dpi. Just like all of them, they're all in layers. If you're familiar with layers, they're pretty much in every program now.
And that's you get to set your canvas size?
Yeah, you can change everything on here.
Okay. And why would I use Manga Studio over, I don't know, like Mischief or something like that?
It just depends on what you're more comfortable with, what's more in your price range. Okay. If you really don't want to, if you're not super into graphics and you just want to try something out, you know, for very little investment, you know, $48. Not too bad.
You said $48. That's interesting. Yeah, and Mischief, I think you may have mentioned this, but Mischief has a 15-day trial or something like that, so you can get in there and play with it.
Yeah, a lot of these have
cool.
Big few day trials on them. And then here you can see the exporting ability: bitmap, JPEG, PNG, TIFFs, Targa, Photoshops. So it supports a lot of different file types.
Cool. Okay. So it's a matter of price and personal preference and kind of what you're going to be using it for. If you need print, then you might want to look at something that supports print. Otherwise, you can go with something else. Okay.
Yeah. This one is Sketchbook Pro. It goes anywhere from $59 to $210, again, depending on the version. So if the lower end, very affordable. Very much like Photoshop in the fact that you can paint with different brushes. So here you see the different layers. So I use kind of like a paintbrush here, then did a texture brush. And this will export for print as well. So if you want to do posters.
So that's very cool. I like that. I use Sketchbook Pro. I have it on the Mac. I have it on the. Well, I have it everywhere actually. I have it on my iPad, and I have it on all the Android tablets in the house. And I wish that I could scale things on it like I can scale things in with vector apps, because then you wouldn't, to me, you wouldn't need anything but Sketchbook Pro.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It is very much like Photoshop, and if you draw it really small and then you need it really big, you're kind of out of luck. You just have to redraw it. So usually in this, I start at, say, something that will be at 300 dpi for like a large sheet of paper, and that way, if I ever need it for something for an app, I can always just scale down. And it's not that big of a deal.
So how big is that picture right there?
This thing, I think I just made it to go on a birthday card.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this may not be a good example.
So yeah, this one's 7.5 by 11 at 300 dpi.
Oh, okay.
And, I was able to shrink it down to be like a little picture inside my daughter's birthday invitations.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, definitely love Sketchbook Pro. Love it, love it, love it. And it seems like there's a lot of people out there who do YouTube videos over how to use these tools too. So lots of great resources out there.
Yeah, and this one will also integrate with Photoshop. You can save it as a Photoshop PSD, PNG, bitmap, TIFF, just like the other software will.
Cool.
And then we go into Photoshop, which again, this is like Sketchbook Pro. You can do different textures with different brushes and put them all in different layers. And obviously this is like pretty much the benchmark when people think of like a lot of graphics. They always use Photoshop as a verb. When you just Photoshop it, looks Photoshopped. So everybody knows this one.
Now I will say that the tool does not necessarily make you a better artist, because I have all these same tools and I can't seem to come up with an image that looks as good as this one. So just know that if you're looking at because sometimes when you look at something, you're like, wow, that's a really great tool. Those are really great examples. That's going to make me a really great artist. Not necessarily. It's just a really good tool.
Yeah, so like here's something.
Flavor Ed.
Too bad Ed's not with us. There he is with his gold teeth and his Corona chain.
Oh, he's with us. He's with us right there. Flavor Ed.
But yeah, like this one, you see, I set up for like if you're gonna use this as a splash page of like a top-selling iPad game. This one's set up for iPad 72 DPI. And the other one that I had open was made for print. So you can do either or. When I
Oh,
actually,
we
when I
gotta
do my
turn
graphics, I do all my resizing in Photoshop.
we have to turn that into an app. Flava Ed.
Someone
Okay,
wants to make it, I'll give you the splash page.
I love it. So you do all your what'd you say you do in Photoshop? You do what for?
I do my resizing because my preference is to stay with Adobe Flash. So I'll draw everything for like iPad Retina size, and then when I'm scaling it down to like iPhone and iPhone Retina or whatever, I'll just go in there and just cut all the images in half by dimensions.
Okay. So I assume you're going to show us some Flash stuff here.
Yeah.
All right.
Just one more thing. If you want to do some 3D pretty cheaply, Swift 3D is this program. It integrates with Flash. It's full 3D. You can do 3D animations as well as the modeling in it.
Is that still available?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I thought it had gone off the market.
I just was on their website. It goes for $249.
Okay,
Wow.
great.
Wow, that's gone up a lot since its early days.
Yes.
So yeah, so say like you had like a tank animation and you wanted to put this in one of your games, you just publish it out as a Swift file. The only problem is you need to change it because, judging by your surprise, Swift 3D is a little bit older. So you need to change that Swift file into an ActionScript 3 file, which all you have to do is just open up Flash and drag it in here, and then just export the Swift through Flash, and it'll just update the file. And then if you have Animo, you can turn it into a sprite sheet for Corona and have your
cool.
3D animation model ready for Corona.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that it did that. Yes, Swift's been around for it's been for a while. Seems like 2000, I want to say.
Yeah, I think I was using Swift when I was using like Flash 5 when it was like Macromedia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
Okay,
it's definitely
cool.
been around.
Yeah. Well worth it though. I mean, don't take my surprise at some of these price tags as kind of like a negative thing. It's just if the tool does what you need it to do, then it's worth every penny, right? I played with Swift a lot back in the early days, but didn't really have a need or a practical application for it. So I can't imagine now what I would use it for. But when you're showing an example like that, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, now the price tag makes sense, right?
Why not Blender for
get
this?
value out of it. What's that?
Why not Blender 3D?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, maybe Greg, have you used Blender for 3D stuff?
I actually have books on Blender and I've yet to open them. So I haven't. I think I even had Blender, like the install file, and Unity as well, and I just have not gotten around to use them.
Yeah.
Blender does have a learning curve to it, so.
Right. Yeah. I think in some of these tools, especially like Mischief and things like that, I mean, you can get in and start working right away. But yeah, you're right. Some of these tools are it just takes a lot more to get ingrained in and get used to all the different features. Okay, so
yeah, so Swift would be a good way, if you just want to get some 3D animations into your Corona app pretty easily if you're not familiar with Blender, because really Swift is very basic. You just kind of model it, then you just kind of drag and drop animations onto it, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I've seen some people do some Minecraft videos on YouTube, and they use Blender and create some pretty extravagant things, but that's full bore animation, a fully rendered movie as opposed to just snapshots of images that you then put into a sprite sheet. So what are we're looking at here? We're in Flash. We've got an ant. Is that an ant? Grasshopper.
It's a little guy that you can use to make sprite sheets with. So I mostly cover Flash. But yeah, just to recap, so On the lower end, you have Manga Studio for like $48, Sketchbook Pro for $59, Mischief for $65, and then higher end Swift 3D for $249, Toon Boom Animate for $380, and then Flash, depending on when you bought it or rent it, I guess, and whatever Adobe feels like charging at the time, $20 to $50 a month.
And of
Yeah,
course, on the free side, GIMP and Inkscape.
Yeah.
Yep.
You haven't mentioned iDraw, right?
No, I actually had it on here, and I guess I uninstalled it at some point. iDraw is very similar to Adobe Illustrator. If anyone listening to this is familiar with that.
There's a desktop version and an iPad version, right?
Yeah, that's why I actually
iDraw.
checked out iDraw, because I figured it'd be like Sketchbook Pro. I could go from desktop to iPad and back and forth working on projects, and I wanted vector. I'm just not a fan of the pen tool and the way how Illustrator puts everything in layers and groups things. I just could never get used to it. But that's just my thing. If you're really used to Illustrator, then you could save a ton of money and go with iDraw, and then you'd be able to use it on both iOS and OS X.
iDraw is great. I like it.
Yeah, I agree that the pen tool is kind of a, it seems like there's a defining line there where people either like to, don't mind, I don't say like it, they don't mind drawing with the pen tool, or they just don't like it at all, and usually I don't mind drawing with it, but there are times when I'll get into an illustration where I'm like, I can't grab what I want to grab, or I can't remember the key combinations to do what I want to do, and I get frustrated, and that's the point where I'm like, at that point, that's the point where I hate Illustrator. I'm like, I just, some of these other tools are kind of like, I just want to grab it and move it. I don't, I don't want to do all the different paths and all the other stuff that goes along with it. I just want to grab it and move it.
Yeah, that's my same opinion too, because I come just from a art background where you just pick up a pencil, you draw on paper, and that's it. You don't have to map out what you're going to draw ahead of time. Is it going to be like a circle? Do I have to make a curve here? That's why I stick to the programs I just have been showing now, because you pick your little brush tool and you draw, and that's it. And you want to erase part of it, you can select it and get rid of it, or you can just pick the eraser and just erase it. It's very much just like drawing with a real pencil. Flash, one of the main points I like this is because, one, it supports exporting PNGs for apps. Most people don't know you can actually export stuff for print for this, because you can change the resolution. So even my print work that I do, I actually draw it in Flash, just because I'm so used to drawing it. And I also like the paint bucket, which Illustrator's paint bucket I can never get used to. Sometimes it would fill in half, sometimes it would fill in the whole shape, put shapes on top of each other. This one, you just kind of draw a shape, paint bucket in, and you're done.
Well, very cool.
And I'm fully in agreement with Greg. Flash is still a wonderful tool to use for doing any kind of development for that. I use it with all of my students. It's that perfect convergence between game development and animation and film, and you can do just so much with it.
Yeah, there are a few things about it, and I don't want to make this a rant, but there are a few things about it that are a little unnerving, because when you come from Photoshop and you go to Flash, some of the tools don't work the way that you want them to. So, Greg, if you will, along this conversation, you point out some of those things and give people tips on how to get around them, that would be great. And also, I think it's important for us to note that you are actually drawing on a Cintiq, right? You're drawing on a graphic display tablet.
Yeah, it's one of the higher-end tablets where it just looks like a computer monitor, and it just comes with a pen. And on one side of the pen, you draw with it. You flip it over, and just like a pencil, you can erase with it.
Okay, so you're actually drawing on a display. You can see what you're drawing as you draw it, as opposed to a graphic tablet that might sit on your desk, and then you have to look at the screen and hold your hand on the tablet and kind of have some level of what do you call it, hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, and some people actually take really well to that. Like, everyone assumes, oh, if you want to do really nice drawings, you have to have a Cintiq or a higher-end tablet like that. But Adam Phillips, who used to work for Disney and now is like a really big name in the animation, he actually uses a tablet where it sits down on your desk and you look up at the screen, but you draw and you don't look where you're drawing.
Well, and that's classic art training is to do it that method, isn't it? It's Greg can speak better to it than I can, but my wife, who's a classically trained artist, is always telling me, don't look at the monitor, don't look at your hand, look at what you're drawing as you're doing this. And the tablets that are not Cintiqs that you can just simply draw on, and I'm one who prefers the Cintiq. I'm not don't have good hand-eye coordination, but the tablets that you can use for just simply drawing on it are from Wacom or Monoprice or something like that. You can get one of those for very reasonable amount, from under $100 to what, $250? I think is the high-end non-graphic display.
It seems like the graphic tablets. Is that the right term? Just the graphic tablets, or
yeah,
they just called tablets? Okay. Those are those range in price, and whether you get them from Wacom or if you get them from somebody else. The Cintiq line or the graphic display tablets, whatever, those seem to be pretty pricey. But you're saying though, Brian, that you can get Monoprice, you can get
like $50. You can get a basic drawing tablet that's pretty good sized. I think it was 11 by 8 for drawing size for your drawing area, and then the actual tablet or the drawing pad's a little larger.
Well, Greg, you said didn't you get yours off of eBay?
My very first Wacom I got from Best Buy. They don't even make it anymore. It was like $40 to $50, and it was just one where this little thing. It's like the size of a mouse pad, and you would look at the screen, but then the pen would be down on your desk, and you would draw. And then I sold that and bought an Intuos 3, and that was like $200. And then I got the Wacom Cintiq 12WX, which is now the 13 HD for like $1,000, and then this one I have now is $2,000.
Okay.
So every time you go a little bit bigger, they kind of go up in price considerably.
Yeah, I've seen that the Cintiqs seem to hold their price, but you can go on to eBay, and typically the ones that are a little older, maybe a generation or two back, you can get a good price on those. So we're talking, somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $800 for something like that, and which is fairly, relatively good when, especially for the real estate that you get. So like the Cintiq that Greg has, I think is what, like 24-inch or 22-inch?
This is one of the first models. This is the 21UX.
Okay, the 21UX, which for the price, I think on eBay you can get one of those for maybe $800, whereas the 13-inch Wacom that you can get today is somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1,300 or something like that. So there's definitely a price difference. Anyway, sorry, didn't want to derail there, but I just want to point out that you are drawing directly on the screen, which is if you're using a mouse to do things, can be a lot different.
Yeah, when I first started, when I first got my computer and I was using Flash 5, I didn't know if these tablets existed or anything, so I just used the right-handed mouse, even though I'm left-handed, and I was still able to create animations. And it's just, if you're passionate about it, you'll find a way. But you can have all the money in the world and buy the best tools, but if you don't care about it, your art's going to be terrible.
Yes.
So.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, show us how to create something in Flash and turn it out for our apps.
Yeah, so I'll just do a pretty simple demo here. So I just created a new document. This is size for iPad Retina at 2048 by 1536. So if you're making a game, what I would normally do is keep everything on separate layers here, just like in Sketchbook Pro, Photoshop. Everything can have layers. You could draw your background. So we'll just. So like say if I were just going to have, let's at least make it somewhat interesting. So pretend it's like a night sky or something. You're going to be a space game. So this was going to be your background. What you could do is publish this out as a PNG file at 2x, whatever you want to call it.
So you're just You're just exporting the image.
Yeah.
You've got all the keystrokes memorized, so.
Yeah, I guess it'd be file export. And then once I have this and I was ready to change it for like iPad 1 or whatever size that we need, you can just take in Photoshop and resize these images. But then, so what's good about drawing in Flash here is now you have the background and you can see how everything else would be in size to your background shape. So if you were going to draw like a little spaceship, just pretend that looks like a spaceship.
A little cowboy hat spaceship. Yeah, I think making all the other objects the right size or relative to the scene is definitely one of the challenging things for me.
Yeah, I usually, well, what I would normally do is would just like sketch it out. I wouldn't try to make the final product, and just so you have everything laid out the way you want it, and then redraw it the way you actually do want it. So here's the spaceship. So I would save this as a symbol for a movie clip, call it ship.
And what does that do for us?
That puts it in our library here. So now when we export this, it's not going to export the entire 2048 stage. It's just going to export this little spaceship guy. So if you right-click on your library, you can actually choose to export the PNG directly. And then I would call it ship 2x.
So at that point, he's still an at2x image.
Yeah, because I'm assuming right here for this particular game, we're going to do iPad Retina, and then we're also going to do just the regular graphics for iPad.
So all the graphics that come off of that scene are pretty much at 2x.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah, because the stage is still at 2048 by 1536.
Okay.
Can I interrupt you? One more remark. So when you are resizing all your images from high res to low res, I just use image image magic script to downsize all the images to lower res, so you don't have to manually resize them in Photoshop or whatever else.
Is that what tool is that?
Image magic script.
Okay.
I can share it. I think I posted on my GitHub.
Oh, is it an open source type thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you a link.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, I know there's a variety of tools out there. I think there's one that's in the App Store that you can buy for like $5 that does that kind of thing. There's a website that you can go to. I've seen that where you can you create your big for your icons. You create the biggest icon and then you run it through and it creates all the smaller icons. So yeah, definitely save you some time. Yeah. Yeah, the icon robot's one of those. Yeah. So definitely some tools that can save you time.
For icons, you can use how it's called Iconography.
Cool. Yeah, if you put a link in the chat, that'll be great.
And it's free.
Yeah, I usually just always have Photoshop and Flash open. So I'll just this method works well for children's books because I notice like when you make universal games, it's easier just to kind of scale things accordingly. But with children's books with the text, you usually have to change positions of objects, especially if you're going from iPad Retina to like the Kindle Fire, because you're losing. I think Kindle Fire is like what, only 600 pixels tall landscape. So usually when I do that, I'll save this one as like iPad, then save as Kindle as the same file, and then change your dimensions here. And then when I export off to, since I only have a limited amount of space, I'll have to move the spaceship or whatever objects accordingly to the stage size.
Okay. And I notice you're working directly on the main scene. Is that right, or are you working kind of in between the scene and the symbol in the library?
Oh no, I'm drawing everything right on the main scene just so I could see how everything would fit in proportion to each other.
Because I know in Flash, it's one of the things that I get a little confused about is I'm somewhere between the symbol library and somewhere between the main scene.
Yeah, I like to stick on the main scene, and I could actually show a quick example why. So say we just knew we were going to draw like an enemy ship, and you started right from a new symbol, save a blank canvas. And you made a little enemy guy. Okay, so now you have your enemy in your library, and you can export them. But then when you import into the game, you have no idea how big he is.
Mm.
And then, you can go in your code, obviously, and change it, but it's easier this way, because, say, if you already had him drawn, and he happened to be, like, this large. So then on your stage, you say, okay, well, you just shrink him down to the size you want him. The thing is, when you export him as the PNG, it's going to export the original size.
Yeah.
Which is not
Yeah, I ran into that early on. That was very frustrating to like you say, put him onto the scene, size him to what I wanted, and then when I exported him, find out he's a completely different size. That was, I was like, what's going on here? Very, very frustrating.
Yeah, that's why when I start out, I'll just have like an empty thing, and I'll just take like a light gray tool and my brush and just kind of, draft out where I want the title, and then your little spaceships, and then I'll add a new layer on top of that, and then actually start going through and drawing the lettering how I want it. And then once everything's the way I want it, you can export everything out as individual symbols, and they'll be the correct size.
Gotcha. So you create a sketch layer, sketch everything out, then you go back and do the final inking, I guess you could call it, and then you export that out at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in your properties tool, you can always change how opaque the sketch is underneath. So if you want it a little bit lighter, so you're not confusing yourself.
So what's the purpose of creating the object in this as a symbol if you don't go in and work on the object inside the symbol library?
The benefit of creating into a symbol is just for the exporting as the PNG. Especially if you're going to be making sprite sheets, since Flash is made for animation. So if this movie clip were actually an animation, let's say, do a quick one here. So like he's exploding or something.
So you've drawn him, just for the people who are listening on the podcast, you've drawn him on the canvas, the size that you want him to be. You've turned him into a symbol. Which is actually a movie clip, and now you're going in and you're going to create the animation within the symbol, and then when you get ready to export, you're going to export that out as a PNG sequence.
Yeah. Say this is like the animation for when you hit the bad guy and he explodes. So now that he's a movie clip, when you export the PNG, it'll actually export all the frames that you can load into your texture packer or sprite helper, whatever you prefer to use here. So we'll go here. See, now here's all the sprites I have.
So you have an enemy 1 and enemy 2.
Yeah, so there's each individual frame of the animation that I can just drag right into a texture packer.
And texture packer, of course, is a third-party tool, but it's a big time saver. I mean, I like it. I probably don't use all the features of it, but it certainly saves me time creating the sprite sheets. Sergey, do you have any? Is that what you use? You use texture packer? Or what do you?
No, I'm not using texture packer, just because I haven't quite had a need for it. But if I do use, I can use another free software which is called. Let me check it. I have it installed.
Sergey likes the free software.
Of course, I like free software.
I noticed that the other day when you were like, "Hey, I can use the Go servers and I can use Go language, and it's free."
DW Optex. I don't know how to pronounce correctly. Let me type it in.
Oh, it's Optex? Yeah, I had that.
Yeah, this one.
Have you used that before, Greg?
Yeah, I think when you use it free, the only thing you have to do is like wait like 10 seconds or something, before it exports or something
Yeah.
like that. It's not very limiting though if you just keep the free version.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So, but the basic idea, though, is regardless of the tool that you want to make or use, you are creating a sprite sheet, which does what for us?
So this could be for your animations. So since Flash is made for animations, you just draw it like how you would animate like any cartoon. Save it as a movie clip, export as PNG. You have them. You put right into your sprite sheet compiler, and move it right over into Corona. And again, since you already have everything sized how you need it, it's good to go right out of the box. So you can just import right in Corona your background, your animated guys, your explosions, whatever you need.
And I noticed when you did the export of the PNG sequence in the library, the object itself was smaller than I guess what they call it, the canvas or the stage. So that didn't matter. The final export was just the object itself. Do I have to do anything special to make that happen?
No, that's one of the other benefits of making them the movie clips, because otherwise, if I were to export, just by default, you can change this, but it's going to want to export the entire stage. So that's why for the background, it's not that big of a deal to export the entire thing, because the background's going to be full size anyway.
Okay.
Whereas in here, it's just going to export the size of the ship.
Gotcha. So it does that for you automatically. You don't have to do anything. That's cool.
Correct.
That's very cool. All right. Well, what else do we need to know?
Not too much, really. It's just unlike Illustrator, the pen tool isn't like the Illustrator pen tool at all. It's more just like a pencil tool. So if you were to draw a pencil line, it looks like that. You can kind of manipulate it how you need it shaped.
So you're not having to work with the pen tool where you're doing Bezier curves or whatever, Bezier curves.
Yeah. So you can use the pen tool like normal, but then it just treats it as like if you just drew it with the pencil tool. You can delete pieces of it. You can manipulate it.
Okay.
Whereas Illustrator, you can go in here and like kind of adjust the points on each one. This one, you don't worry about the points.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're having a little bit of audio trouble on your, or at least I'm hearing a little bit of audio fuzz on your side. So I think we probably can wrap it up there. We're approaching the 3 o'clock hour. Thanks for showing us all that stuff. I would say that if you're thinking about using Flash, definitely go watch some of the training videos that are out there, things that are on YouTube. I think, Greg, even on gpanimations.com, you've put out some stuff over there to teach people things. So go educate yourself on how to use Flash. There are some things that I've seen that are frustrating at first just because if you don't understand how the tool works, but I keep coming back to Flash as being a very good tool for this type of thing. So thanks for sharing all those different options with us. So I guess at the end of the day, what we've seen is that there are a variety of different tools that we could use. They all come in at different price points. It really depends on what we want to use them for and how comfortable we are with the tool. So Illustrator is affordable on their monthly plan, but it may be overkill if you're not comfortable in that tool. So very, very interesting. So very cool. Well, Greg, where can people find more information about your stuff?
gpanimations.com, all one word, and my blog is gpanimationsblog.com.
gpanimationsblog.com. Okay. And also you've got your books over at mattybearbooks.com and also your apps, your Fire TV apps and all that kind of stuff going on as well. So you guys check that out. Be sure to show Greg some love. And you can also find him GP Animations on Twitter. Isn't that right? GP Animations? Yep. So if you have questions for him, I will throw him under the bus and say you can ask him. He's very generous with his time, and he will probably at least point you in the right direction so that you can get the resources that you need. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for spending time with us.
I have one note. While Greg was talking about graphics, I was skimming the new book on Apple about their programming
Yeah.
language. I kind of read it, so it's a nice language. It's very easy to read. It has a lot of similarities with existing languages like Python, like Golang, a little Rust, and in some way Lua, of course, because we have a lot of similarities, and it does allow you to do the same thing in different ways, and it uses classes. It uses structs as Go, so you can use two types of inheritance in your applications. And what I was disappointed is that I couldn't find anything about threading, about multiprocessing, about parallel programming. So it's not a case for the language, it seems.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. We've talked about before. Right? Apple needs to. I think they really need to make a showing in the cloud space for their developer community. I don't think they've done that yet.
Mm-hmm. So other than that, it's a nice language.
Cool. All right. Well, awesome. Yeah, go check that out. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, and we'll see how that evolves over time. See if that becomes something that they add on to or what. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit next week as well. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for spending time with us. We will see you back here next Monday at noon Pacific to talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. Until then, have a great week and happy coding.